E7 is an action RPG originally released in Japan in 2009 and Europe and North America about a year later. As with the other games in the series, it follows the adventure of Adol the Red and his sojourn through various countries and continents. In E7, Adol and his friend Dogi have landed on Altago. Altago has been experiencing earthquakes, an epidemic of the flu, and a sudden increase of monsters. Adol is eventually given the task to investigate these occurrences. What begins as an investigation leads into 5 dragon temples, something called the Wind of Destruction, and well, it all sort of just fades into white noise from there. The game presents a backbone for the lore, but it's so horribly done, the focus is instead shifted to adventuring across the countryside and exploring dungeons and temples. When I say adventuring, I really mean rolling. You'll find yourself rolling instead of walking, as it's quite a bit faster. In all seriousness, the storyline is as you'd expect. It exists as just a simple backbone to the button mashing. The overall theme tries to achieve a deep concept about creationism and balance, but it's so horribly executed that I ended up resenting their intentions. It's a very safe and lazy plot where anything can happen and everything happens conveniently. I'll give you examples of what I mean by conveniently. One of your characters dies from the fever. As your protagonists are in disbelief, conveniently, a dragonstone glows and revives her. Didn't know it could do that. You'll have the option of warping to any location on the map, which is extremely nice, until they take it away for the sake of a plot point, like soldiers are blocking the roads outside of town. They explain this inconsistency with, earthquakes must have shifted the locations. You knock out a couple of soldiers and are unsure what to do with them. Conveniently, one of your party members has the ability to erase their memories, even though that was never introduced in the rest of the game. You'll need an incantation to travel through some ruins, but you don't know it. Conveniently, one of the sick NPCs will unconsciously tell you while they're asleep. When plot devices are so lazily pushed like this, you have no investment in the world, the plot, or the characters. You play the game to see where the game takes you, but you're never engrossed in the game itself. Along with a horrible plot, none of the characters are particularly appealing. The dialogue is quite dry and uninspired. There are only temporary villains in the game, as once they've lost in battle, they see the error of their ways and support Adol in his quest. The character Adol himself doesn't speak at all. His actions are driven by a narrative such as, Adol told him everything he needed to know, or Adol nodded his head in agreement. I assume the decision to have him silent was for imagination purposes. Unfortunately for E7, there isn't enough depth to the story for imagination to manifest. You're stuck with a bland hero whose niche in the game is just to be the savior. Because, well, he's an adventurer, and that's because he's Adol Christen, Adol the Red. He's the hero. He's special. It just is. One of the greatest achievements of E7 is the fluency of the gameplay. You'll be rolling around, unleashing combos, blocking, and switching to different characters seamlessly. Instead of previous games where you had to swap elemental weapons to kill enemies, in this game, the dynamic was changed to swapping characters. Some monsters have a hard shell, so you'd swap to one of your powerhouses. A bird is difficult to hit, so you'd swap to a ranged attacker. You get several characters that join your party, and for the most part, they all play out slightly differently. Each character has an arsenal of skills they can unleash on the enemies. The skills do vary quite a bit, but in the end you use them so often that they sort of just blend together in a flashy combo. You'll also come across large sub-bosses around the world called Titanos. They're quite fun to seek out in battle, and they usually reward you quite well, and it's one of the more fun aspects of the game. Unfortunately, there's only a few of them. It is a button mashing game, and as with all button mashing games, it's addictively satisfying until it becomes tediously repetitious. I found the best balance is to play the game in moderation 1 or 2 hours at a time. After only a couple hours of playing, I found myself wanting to pick it up later that day. You'll have plenty of skills in the game, which give a new flood of entertainment until the 50th time you have to use it. The boss battles, although a tad bit too long, are where the game really shines. The game isn't about skills or what your characters have to offer, but what you have to offer your characters. You really have to be diligent about rolling, blocking, and charging your skills. This is where the true mastery comes along. It requires quite a bit of attention, and the ability to predict your enemies is a must. Dying in the game is non-consequential, as you can just restart the battle from the beginning. The game is about 20 to 25 hours long, depending if you want to do subquests or not, and even then, I felt the game dragged on and I felt fighting was at times too repetitious. Another factor in the game are the dynamics of the dungeons. It's very reminiscent of old-school action RPGs for the Super Nintendo. You'll have a field of spikes that you can't cross until you get that special item in the chest that allows you to walk across them. You'll die underwater until you find that special item in the chest that allows you to breathe underwater. The items are all placed linearly in the game, so there are never any feelings of accomplishment when you finally acquire them. They do try to introduce enough dynamics in the game to keep each dungeon fresh. For the most part, it succeeds. They'll try to introduce small puzzles in the game, like hit the switch and a wall opens up on the other side of the map. None of it's really challenging, but these dynamics really do liven up the game. This game is an RPG, so you'll gain levels. The more you use a skill, the higher level that becomes, and you'll progressively upgrade your equipment. You go through so much equipment and gain levels so quickly that all of it's really an afterthought and you never place too much value in it. There are definitely fun moments in this game. Now that I've finished, I'm going to miss the accessibility of jumping to the game for an hour and plowing through a dungeon. Dungeons have interesting dynamics, boss battles require some skill, and the action is wonderfully fluent. It's brought down by pretty much everything else. The story and dialogue is dry, the action does get repetitious after a while, boss battles are a bit too long, and the characters are dull and at times inconsistent. If you've been playing too many turn-based RPGs lately like I have, E7 is a great game to change things up. It's nothing that will change your life, but will entertain you for a couple of hours. I give E7 a mediocre score of 7.5 out of 10. For more reviews, subscribe or go to www.wootstick.com. Every Sunday I will release 3 on Sunday, which are the biggest 3 gaming stories news that matter to me for the week.